Roof. Tamara Dorris here, your Sacramento real estate professor. And today I want to talk about something that is really important for both buyers and sellers. Perhaps we're going to look at this more from the perspective of a buyer because a roof is probably one of the most expensive. In fact, I would say roofs and central heat and air are the two most expensive replacement costs. Now, I'm not going to split hairs and talk about what about termite damage or structural or plumbing or electrical. I'm saying on average, the two biggest expenses that buyers should be aware of when they're looking at property is usually roofing and heat and air. But today we're going to talk strictly about roofs, hence the thumbnail for this video, roof. So what do we know about roofs? Well, we know we need them. We know that one time when my husband was remodeling our house and still working full time, we had 4 children in school, and we went an entire rainy winter with a blue tarp over our house, much like you see on a sitcom with little pans wherever there were leaks. Granted, this was 20 years ago, but those kind of memories never leave your mind. So a roof is something that is just vital, and it's not just vital for your home and your shelter and protection from the elements. It's vital with your loan. If you're getting a loan to purchase a home, it's got to have some good bones, but it's got to have a workable roof. Typically speaking, most lenders will require what's called a 2-year roof cert, and that's just someone comes out from a roofing company that gets up on top of the roof and plays around and pokes around, and if they're willing to certify, and it costs you as a seller a couple of $100s typically, if the roofing company is willing to certify that this roof should last another 2 years. Now, there's a whole lot of shoulds and maybes and what ifs in that statement, because obviously the roofing company would like to have the work of replacing the roof, and they're not going to put their neck on the line and say this roof will definitely last 2 years if it's kind of shoddy. But I'm just telling you that from the lender's perspective, if you don't have some sort of documentation that says it will last about 2 years, then the loan might not go through. Okay, so that's an important thing to know if you're a buyer and if you're a seller too. So let's look at roofs overall. In the Sacramento region, and I'm not talking about up north where we get snow, where they may even use metal roofs, and I'm not talking about the tile roofs that we see. Well, we're seeing more tile roofs in the Sacramento area, but so let's look at both. Let's do that. So the average roof is made of composition. Composition is much more reliable and long living than the previous shingles. Remember the wood shingles? They're easy to draw if you're drawing the house, but they catch on fire much easier, right? And they fall off. So, and wood gets old and dry rot and all that stuff. So really big improvement with composition. What are you going to pay for a composition roof? If you need a new composition roof in the greater Sacramento area, it's going to run you for, let's say, a 2,500 square foot home. I think it's safe to say, and I did some research before this, between $15,000 and $25,000. Now, before that knocks the wind out of your sails, let me remind you that homeowners who take good care of their roofs, in other words, when there's a rain or a windstorm, they keep their gutters clear. Having clogged up gutters can really affect the well-being of your roof, right? Because all that water is just going to sit there, and you can get mold and mildew and dry rot and icky stuff. So if a roof is really well maintained, here's the deal. It's going to last you 40 to 50 years. We're talking comp here, composition roof, 40 to 50 years. That's a long time. Now, there's also different considerations if you have to get a new roof. How many layers does it have? Now, in the state of California, I want to say you're able to have 2 layers. So in other words, if I needed on my house, let's just say it's 2,500 square feet, and I needed a new roof, then the consideration would be, does she need a complete tear down? In other words, do they have to get down to the black tar paper? Or do we just need a second layer? You see the difference? That can make a huge difference in the cost. I mean, obviously, if it just needs a layer and there's no tear down, that's going to be a lot less expensive. You'll know a tear down when you see it, when you go through the neighborhoods and you're seeing them staple that black paper, and there's 20 guys up there before they do the stapling of the black paper, and they're tearing it off, and they have a big dumpster. That's obviously involves a lot more labor, a lot more supplies, so it costs a lot more. Okay, so that's one consideration. The other consideration, if you're a home owner, is just to make sure it's easy breezy to make sure that you have an inspection every few years, even if it's only every 5 years. Because the things in Sacramento that we have to be most leery of, believe it or not, is the wind. We get lots of rain, but if you keep your gutters clean, the rain won't do as much damage. However, the wind, we have wind, as you know, in this area, or if you don't know, we have wind that can sometimes be really, really huge. I mean, it's like hurricane weather. It doesn't last a long time, but it can knock down telephone poles. It can knock down big redwood trees. I'll have to do a video on that next winter. I mean, literally, the big redwood trees we have throughout the Sacramento area. Remember, this is called the City of Trees, Sacramento, second only to Paris, I believe. But when those trees, redwoods, for example, which I have huge ones in my backyard, have a very shallow root. So you've got to make sure that they're well watered in the summer, because that shallow root during the winter, a windstorm comes and knocks out a roof. This last winter here, in fact, like 3 months ago, we had some really bad windstorms, and we could walk around in the neighborhood. In fact, one across the street, a regular like maple tree, completely flipped over, roots showing up. So the wind causes more damage. Now, back in the old days of shingles, of course, it would just knock those shingles off. With comp roofing, it's not as bad. But if a branch falls on your house, like my neighbor's oak tree branch fell on our shop one time, and that makes trouble. So you've got to get that fixed. Now, some of these things obviously are handled with insurance. I'm just telling you about the overall importance of knowing good roof health. Okay. Now, tile roofing, which we see like in the El Dorado Hills area, some in Natomas. We see it. It's not the common denominator in most of the Sacramento region. The interesting thing about tile roofing is it's not that much more expensive, and the longevity of it is predicted to be 50 to 100 years. So it's going to last a long time. I've had listings with tile roofs. The challenge I know personally, not from reading this or researching it, so take it with a grain of salt, is that tile roofs, when the tiles break off, it's more expensive to repair them, other than like a comp roof where you can just get up there and patch it. So the maintenance is super critical with tile roofing, because when a tile gets knocked off, then it rains, then you get rain, and then you get dry rot. So there are pros and cons to both comp roofs and tile roofing. Tile roofing does last longer, but I believe that there's more incidents where you're going to have to do more maintenance on it. So you have to check that out for yourself. I'm just helping you as a buyer or a seller who wants to know, what do I need to know about roofs? So basically, when I have a listing, one of the first things I do, if the roof is brand new and the seller says, okay, here's the paperwork that we just had a roof done like last year or 3 years ago, they're going to have the paperwork. But let's say it's an older home. Maybe it's, 15 years old, 20 years old, even older. Remember, roofs are supposed to last, if they're comp, they're supposed to last 40 to 50 years. So if someone says, we've lived here 20 years, this is the same roof when we bought it, and I get out and I look and I pretend like I know everything about roofs, which I don't, but I'll get up and I'll look and I'll say, okay, I'm going to have a roof inspection. And at this point in time, we can get these for free. Now, I can't guarantee that whenever you're watching this video, that will still be a thing. But right now, and as a seller or buyer, you also can call the roof doctors in Sacramento, and they typically will do a free roof inspection. I do this so that I can include it in my listings for people who want to buy the house. So if I have a seller, and I will have roof doctors come out and give a roof inspection, so I can include it in MLS. Why? Because that will help alleviate any questions or stress, because a good agent who's working with a buyer is going to say, well, we probably want to have the roof inspected. But if I can say, here, the roof's been inspected and it's in good shape, and of course, let me back up. If the roof inspection comes back and it's like there's 3 patches here, there's this missing, or I will encourage the seller, let's please get this fixed up so we can have a clean bill of health. But that, if you can understand from a seller's perspective, will make it much more enticing for a buyer who now doesn't have to worry about, oh my gosh, am I going to have to come out of pocket $25,000, right? Because a lot of times buyers will not choose to have a roof inspection. If the roof looks fine and they have a home inspection, and if the home inspection doesn't say, oh, you should have the roof checked, or oh, you should have a termite inspection, some buyers will not. And some buyers' agents will not insist on that. So we're not going to go down that road right now because I'll do a whole video on inspections, or mini videos on inspections. But for right now, suffice it to say that a buyer should always insist on having a roof inspection, especially if they're free, right? And sellers, it's that extra step to say, look, this house is in good shape. I had a couple boo-boos on my roof that I had fixed for you. So now it's got, remember, the longevity, 40 to 50 years. And especially if it's a single layer, it's the first layer. So when you're a buyer, you want to make sure you have a roof inspection. You need to understand that with some loans, with loans in general, that if a roof's falling apart, the appraiser is going to call for a roof certification. And this is a little more stringent with government-backed loans, and for good reason. Government-backed loans, that property is the collateral, and the buyer doesn't usually have a lot of money invested in it. So with a conventional loan, the buyer has a little more skin in the game, so they're going to make sure that roof is in good shape. So that's a whole nother story too. But make sure that the roof is certifiable for at least 2 years. And if it's only certifiable for the last 2 years or the next 2 years, you have to ask yourself, am I going to be able to come out of pocket 25 grand in 2 years when I need a new roof? Or is it only got one layer and then I don't have to come out of pocket as much? Or can I just keep patching it up for the next 5 years? So these are questions that you really, really want to ask and consider when you're a buyer, because that's going to be a big expense, and it's going to be an important one. Your roof protects everything. It's like your foundation and your roof. You got to have your roof. And if you're a seller and you're thinking of thinking of selling a home in the Sacramento area, I really, really encourage, if you don't use me for an agent, at least make sure that you have a roof inspection and you know what the status of the roof is. Because I will tell you right now that when you are knee deep in a transaction to sell your home, the last thing you want is for someone to come along and say, oh, all this work came out of the inspection. That's going to cost you $10,000 or $15,000. Are you ready to lower your price, Mr. Seller? So we don't want any surprises. I stress the point of making it as stressless as possible when we sell your home. That's my goal. So anyway, I hope you subscribe. I hope you find this information useful. I'll do lots more videos to help educate both buyers and sellers in the Sacramento and beyond areas. So click the links below. If you want to set up a Zoom call with me, we'll have a chat and talk about your real estate needs. Have a great day, and thanks for watching.